they're getting wild for me. And all the pretty chicks all wanna smile at me. These rap cats, man, they all got this style for me.
Hello and welcome back to the East Coast Experience. Now on today's episode, I'm going to be going through the free live webinar questions that got sent through. Now the free live webinar did not end up happening, but it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because a lot of these questions that I got through need a lot of context to the answers. So I'm still going to be pushing forward with trying to give free, helpful information and content as much as I possibly can. And if you ever have any questions, please send them through. And for those of you who have asked me questions, you know that I give a very in-depth response. And for a lot of it, it is very helpful to get questions through because then I can have a better direction with how I make content. Questions through, then I understand the direction that I'm going to be going with my content. Because that's what I want to do here. I want to try and just give away all and any tips that I have around SMP so that a struggling artist doesn't have to go through the same struggles that I went through. Alright, so without further ado, here are the live webinar questions. Now, the first question is about saturation. How to avoid a saturated SMP treatment, an overly saturated head. So the question is, saturation, when is enough impressions enough? When do you call it? Now, this is a tough question because a lot of this is going to come down to your experience. But I think that a common misconception with saturation is that 9 out of 10 heads that look overly saturated, the reason that they are overly saturated is not from too many impressions. The reason that they look overly saturated is from bad impressions and bad impressions merging. And also as well, another one could be poor ink choice. So it could be a too dark of an ink for that client's scalp. So a lot of the time when a student might see an overly saturated head that almost looks like a helmet, you think, oh, I don't want to put too many dots into my next treatment. But a lot of the time that's not the case. Those treatments that look all blotched out like that, those heads are bad, poor impressions that are all merging together. Now, I just recently had a client come in who was from another artist who wanted to get his SMP repaired. Now, he's going away to get laser, but when I looked at his scalp, if I was to do that scalp, I would have 3 times the amount of dots on that head, and it wouldn't have looked as saturated as that treatment looked. The reason that treatment looks saturated is because the dots that were on there were merging together, and they weren't clean impressions. They were big, blotchy impressions. There was still heaps of spacing, but also the ink was way too dark for the gentleman's skin tone. So even though there was spacing, it looked overly saturated. So, and when I watch overseas artists and artists that I aspire to be like, one of the main things that I see is I think, holy shit, how do they fit so many dots in? One of the things I thought when I watched Tony and Chris work is that their density is 10 times more dense than something that I would do, yet it doesn't even remotely look saturated. So if you're a beginner artist and you're starting out, understand that density comes over time. You want to always start very wide with your impressions on the first session and slowly but surely condense that in. And always err on the side of caution. If you're starting to think maybe this is getting a little bit too close together, or maybe this is getting a little bit too dense, just stop. Because at the end of the day, that client can come back in 6 months' time and maybe you're a bit more experienced. In 12 months' time and you might be a bit more experienced. Then you can add to that. It's better that you do that and be cautious as opposed to try and go gung-ho when you're just starting out and try and pack all this density in. Although you do want to slowly but surely get more comfortable with adding density. And it's not something that's going to come overnight. It's something that you almost train your eyes to be able to see. By seeing heads over and over again and seeing density over and over again, you start to see areas that have white in them. You'll start to see that spacing. And a good technique that I use for this is we spend so much time very, very close to the scalp. It's just throughout your session, step back, look at the overall look of the SMP. Get the client to stand up, see them in a different light. Then get a pen and mark the areas that you see when they're standing up or when you're sitting back. Because once you get closer into the SMP, you'll notice that those spots will disappear. So get them to stand up, circle the different areas that you're going to work on. If you think that the density's done, go and have a look in a different light, circle those spots, then get them to sit back down. So, because when you're up that close, it's very hard to judge if it's going to be dense enough. And you've got to remember that 90% of people that look at that SMP treatment are all going to be looking from afar. They're not going to be looking at it as close as you do. So it's important for it to look good at a distance as well. And what's more important here than anything? What's more important than the density? Because you can figure that out over time. It's more important that those impressions look good. If your impressions look good and you've got no density, it'll look sweet. If you've got good impressions and there's more density than it needs on that head, it's probably still going to look good. So my advice here is go wide and slowly condense. Don't try and be dense on session 2. Even if you're starting out, even session 3, just take your time. There is no density police that's going to come along and be like, that's not dense enough. It's how confident you're feeling. Slowly condense that treatment in. And if you're going, I don't feel confident putting any more in this head, stop. Your client's going to thank you. And you realize your client doesn't know what your density is meant to look like. So if he comes back in 12 months, it's light, I want to get this touched up. Fucking, you're winning there, bro, because he's come back and you didn't butcher that head. You let him go and you kept it in a very safe zone. And a lot of the time, that's what this needs. That's what SMP needs, is a safe place. You want to. I talked to somebody about this the other day, and I've only had a small amount of students come through because I end up talking them out of doing SMP half the time. But you want to almost like when you would go bowling, you put the safety rails up. That's what you want with SMP. You want the safety rails on. You want there to be no reason for your client to leave with a poor SMP treatment. And the way that you do that is caution the whole way through. Is focusing on your impressions. If you're feeling a bit fatigued, stop. If you're worried it's going to be too dense and oversaturated, stop. If it's not looking right, stop. Just don't push through. This is not something you push through. This is care. Care in every single situation. And realize that, once again, you are going to have to train your eyes to see this. Now, what you want to be looking for is when you are starting to get a dense treatment, is you want to step back and you want to look for all the white spaces. You're looking for those white spaces to be even. You're no longer looking at your dots. You're looking at that white space and how does that look on the scalp. When they stand up, how does that look? Does it look like hair? Is it starting to look like their hair pattern? And to give more context on overseas artists, is that Tony teaches a technique where he adds complete density throughout the whole thing. And I'm telling you, it's dense. Then he goes through using a coloration technique where he goes through and retaps a lot of dots with a lighter ink and a lower voltage to sort of create this he calls it a coloration technique, and it creates that look that you see on all of his Instagram posts. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there isn't a point where you go, that's dense enough. There's that level, and that bar is always going to be slowly increasing. And in talking to him, even he is slowly increasing and getting better at adding max amount of density and making it look absolutely flawless. So understand that you need to feel out where you're at with this, and there is no set. There is no set amount of dots. There is not someone with a counter. It's you and your confidence. So you do want to be adding more density over time as you progress. So don't try and be gung-ho density off the bat. Always cautious, and it's always going to be down to you and your confidence. And this is always going to be evolving too. Even myself, even now, I'm catching treatments and going, I could probably add a little bit more to this. But now I'm at that level where I feel like I can. And then there's going to be another level above that, and then above that, and then it goes on forever. And another thing that you can do with this too is looking at the sides of the head. Now this isn't a hard and fast rule, but it's definitely a good one for people that are starting out. If the sides of their head, looking at the distance between each follicle on the sides of the head and judging that for the density that you're going to put on the top of the head. So if they're really sparse on the side of the head, don't compact it down to right next to one another. And if they are really dense on the side, then you're going to have it's going to look better with a closer density. So yeah, have a look at the hair on the side, and when you first start, that's where I'd say to first do your first dots as well, is doing your dots around their actual hair follicles, because then you're getting the density that they've already got on the sides of the head on the top. Is that a hard and fast rule and that's what you got to do? No, but that is a great place to start, because if you're doing the same density, then you really can't go wrong, because if it looks the same on the sides as the top, then you're on. All right, ink color. This is the next question. Ink color. Is it good to change the ink between sessions? Short answer with this one is no. If it settles the right color after the first session, then no. You want to do the first session, wider dots, trying to color match as close as you can. Let that heal. Then when that heals and that comes back, that's how you gauge whether you change the ink or not. So don't just change the ink for the sake of it. If you've got the right color and it's looking good, stick to that. The only time that I would say for you to change your ink during a session or the next session is if you do not feel confident on the temples. Now, with the temples, I think that when you're starting out, you should definitely wait till the second session before you hit those temples, because the skin is so much lighter and so much susceptible to the ink. And also as well, it's more susceptible for you to make a bad impression because that skin is so light. So what I used to do with the temples is that I would add water. I would leave them to last, and I would add water to my ink before I hit them, just to give me that extra little buffer, so I felt a little bit more confident hitting those temples, because the temples can be a doozy. So that's the only time that I would recommend adding water during a session, is to hit those temples. But short answer is no. Don't change your ink for the sake of it. If it looks good, it looks good. And the color that you want is that close zero shave, down to a shaver or a very, very sharp trimmer. So you're color matching to that. If that comes back right, don't change it. And what I thought this question might be in regards to is having different colored dots throughout the SMP, like having light and dark within the treatment. I definitely do think that is good. I think that is something that you should look at down the line. That's something that Tony teaches, but he does not do that with adding water to the ink. He does that all through needle control. And that's why that's something to look at down the line of tapping dots and having lighter and darker dots mixed in to give more of a 3D effect. So that's not done with watering down ink. That's all down to needle control. But that is something that you want to look at when you're much, much further down the line and you feel confident to do so. All right, next question is about creating a natural hairline. Now, if you're watching this, it is going to flick to, please do flick to the video because I'm going to take my camera over to the whiteboard. Rightio, so this is the hairline here. And with a natural hairline, what you want to be doing is you want to be building from the top of the head. So that's the top and this is the front. So a lot of the time you'll see people talk about a natural hairline and they just put one dot across and break that line. But what I think with a natural hairline is it needs to be slow and progressive. So you want to go your normal density that you got here, and so you got your hairline here. You want to space out 2 spaces back from the hairline, and then slowly start building your density from there. So you got your density here, then you're slowly going wider, wider, and wider. And then even as you get out to the front here, you could change your needle size to a 4 or a 5, or even just going lighter with your dwell time to give yourself a very light impression. So you want to go light all the way back to dense. So it's like a slow progression. Just putting a dot on the other side of a line is not going to create a very natural hairline. It's a slow progression back to that density. And then you can also, with that, you could also, so what I've done is quite a messy look here. You could really structure that like I've done here in triangles going across all the way up, and then literally doing the exact same thing over and over again, and then just judging it by your eyes. Step back, have a look, see how that hairline works. But yeah, so you want to slowly build that out to the front. Doing just one dot over a line is not breaking up the hairline. That is not a natural hairline. This is how I create mine, and I find that they look very natural. Then obviously, if you are looking to do that hard edge up, all you're doing is just buttoning right up to that line. That is quite easy to do. There's not too much skill in that. This, you want to build up over sessions, slowly but surely. You want to go wide, then go add a little bit more to it, and a little bit more. It wants to be a slow progression. You think if you shave someone's head, they're not going to have dots. They're not going to have hard hair all the way up to here, and then one or two little hair follicles growing out the top of the head. No. The way that the light reflects off of someone's head is that it's light all the way up to the dense part of the top of their head. And this is what I was talking about before with when you're starting your density pattern. So this is your bald head, this is the front. This is the front, and this is your bald head. So when you start doing your dots, I never advise people to start their dots in the middle of the head. If you're worried about density, start your dots next to the hair follicles that they already have. Almost think of it like as a pattern that you're trying to fill in, because if their current hair follicles are this far apart, then you want to be matching that to begin with. Even if you do go more dense here, you want to start by matching that, because that's going to give you the most accurate reflection of color, of sizing, because you're doing it next to their actual hair follicle. So yeah, building dense all the way out, slowly but surely, over the sessions. That's how I get my natural hairlines. All right, now back to the podcast. All right, so that was the natural hairline. Now, yes, you want to build that hairline out. You want to slowly but surely build it out, because you're never going to have someone with a hairline that's complete density, that's never lost any hair in their life. except for 2 little follicles sitting at the front here, right? Every single person, every single guy is going to have a slight bit of receding at the front, and that's what you want to replicate. You are giving them a new hairline, but you want to slowly fan that out at the front, because unless they're asking for a hard edger, and when they 9 times out of 10 they're asking for a natural looking hairline. Now this also comes down to the consultation process too. This is talking them through what sort of hairline they want. Now it's talking them through the hairline they want, and then also another thing that I do here is if they don't have a hard set answer for what they want for their hairline, and 9 times out of 10 people don't, what I do is I create a very high natural hairline, very high, and then what I do is I do wide spacing throughout it all, and then I add a little bit more density at the front so they can have something to look at for the next week. You have to understand with your clients is that they haven't had a hairline in maybe 10-20 years. So you to ask them off the bat what hairline they want, they're not going to know. But if you do a high, natural, receded look to begin with, what I say to my clients is for the next week, walk around, and whenever you see a mirror, check out your hairline and see what you think. Start to feel what it feels like to have a hairline again, and then start to think about what you might want it to look like. And what normally happens is over my sessions is that the clients slowly but surely bring that hairline down. Then also on the odd occasion, somebody wants a hard hairline and they come in for that. But for the vast majority, I think that is a perfect structure to have for a hairline, is to slowly but surely bring it down. And just remembering when you're bringing it down, you can drop your needle size, you can drop your dwell time and your depth to try and give some lighter dots, but you want to go wider and lighter so that it almost fades out into the front of the head. So your dents here, a little bit wider, and then it almost just fades out, right? Yeah, so if you don't have the video and you're just listening to the audio here, basically what I'm describing is to slowly but surely widen out your dots so that the density stops at the top of their head and then starts to fan out towards the hairline. That's how I do the natural hairline. As opposed to drawing it in, you could, I could do a whole video on drawing in hairlines, but that's SMP with a natural hairline. Now, I'll briefly touch on drawing it in. You just want to go as high as possible. Even if your client's like, oh, that's not really where I want it, just explain to them that this is a process and that we want to be cautious and we want to take it slow, stage by stage. They're going to be coming in for 3 to 4 sessions, and by the end of that 4th session, they're going to be happy with their hairline. But for now, we're going to be starting higher. We're going to be starting lighter with the ink. We're going to be starting, not as dense as they would particularly like it to be. And this is all in their best interest, is to slowly but surely create their hairline. Because what I noticed when I got my SMP done is that after the first session, I realized that I did want something different with my hairline. It takes them actually having it on their head for them to have a good, hard and fast opinion. So get them to raise their eyebrows and go much higher than that. You want to go a good couple of centimeters, a good inch above that. If they've got hair already, sticking to where that hair is. But yeah, once again, I could do a whole video on just drawing in a hairline. But for a natural hairline, just breaking enough to go over that line is not enough for it to create a natural looking hairline. You want to slowly blend it out over the sessions. You're going dense, then wider, and then wider again, slowly, progressively. You're not going to go hard up to that line and then just skip a few dots and call that a natural hairline, because that's not the fucking go. Okay, and then also attached to this question was patterns. What sort of patterns to use? Now, I used to when I was still do study SMP and looking into it into depth. One of the things I looked at was doing different patterns. I think that don't focus on this. Don't put a lot of time and energy into thinking about the patterns that you use, whether you use a triangle, a circle, a straight, or a messy sort of pattern. Put a lot more emphasis just on doing good, clean impressions and wide impressions. Slowly but surely bringing those in. Now, if you want to do them in a triangle, good. If you want to do them a little bit messy, good. Well, the only thing that I would say don't do is don't do a straight line method or a method that looks like it's meant to be there. A method you want it to look messy like a hair follicle pattern is. You don't want perfectly straight lines and then perfectly straight lines right next to it. You want to create a natural level of inconsistency, if that makes sense. And it's better that you would create a follicle pattern like the follicles that they have on their head, as opposed to you then doing a follicle pattern yourself. So if you're starting and you're buttoning up to their hair follicles, have a look at the distance and the pattern that they already have there. But once again, so whether it's a circle, triangle, messy, whatever it is, it's more important that you have clean impressions than it is if you do some form of pattern. But if you find a particular pattern that works for yourself, do that, because really it doesn't matter as long as it doesn't look like it's every follicle, every dot is directly next to one another and that looks like it's just been printed on the head, then you're fine, because it's just you want a natural level of inconsistency, exactly like hair is. I hope that answered the question. Yeah, so start where the hair is, and that's a good gauge for your pattern. All right, next question. What would I do if I started a new business today? I'm guessing the new business is SMP. So, what would I do? I wouldn't do it. I'm just joking. So what I would do is, as much as I love the Gold Coast, I would move to a more densely populated area. So if you're starting out, find yourself a capital in Australia or wherever you are around the world, and find a place that has a bigger audience size. Because if moving's a possibility, then I would 100% say move. I would say if I could start in hindsight, I would probably move to Sydney or maybe Melbourne. Just because Gold Coast itself, I think, only has like 500,000 people. So you gotta understand, with all your efforts around marketing and getting your name out there and looking for clientele, if you have a bigger, wider audience to choose from, it's going to make your life 10,000 times easier. Maybe even moving to USA or England or somewhere like that. You're going to have a lot less struggle with a bigger audience size. There is so much to do with this as well, but I'm going to go touch as many points as I can. All right, so if I was to start again from scratch, I would spend more time choosing where I trained. I was very quick to just go along because somebody else I knew was going along to the training. I would spend a lot more time investigating who I actually trained with, because that's important. The ongoing support, opportunities. I think that and relearning as well, relearning bad habits, it takes up more time, and you want to try and limit the amount of mistakes that you make. And if you can get a good artist who's a good trainer and a good person, then you're going to limit the mistakes that you have to make, because they're going to help you through this process and not force you into mistakes to get you out of the business. Because a lot of trainers aren't trying to create more competition. Just understand that. A lot of trainers are training to make money and not create more competition. So, All right, another thing I would look at is ensure that I could rent a bed near another SMP artist. If you are lucky enough to be in a location where you can get a bed rental near a current SMP artist who is good and who is striving forward, who is a good artist themselves, man, it's literally going to skip you 10 paces forward. And what I would do there is just do everything that you can to try and be a sponge with that artist, because they're doing the thing that you want to do. Don't be too arrogant to listen to advice from that person. Don't be too arrogant to ask for advice. So yeah, if I was starting again, I'd find a good trainer. I would ensure that I could rent a bed near someone, and I wouldn't go into my own space. I would try and get a bed rental within a studio that already has an SMP artist that does well. And if you can't find that, I would go and find that. I think that is beneficial. Then the very next thing I would do is I would look at my life. This is something that I did wrong in the beginning. I would look at my life and I would calculate my total outgoings. What do I need to live and how much I need to survive outside of SMP, right? Because SMP, I would not spend a single dollar that I made off of SMP. So I would go and find a 2-day-a-week job that pays my rent and for my food. That's it. And I would live like that. I would live as if that is my wage and that is going to be my wage for the next 2 years. So I'd go get a casual job that pays my bare minimum. So it pays for, it pays for me to live, right? So I got living, and then SMP doesn't need to make me money. When you're starting out, you cannot have this needing to make you money. If you need money and you're starting and it's SMP, you're going to struggle like shit. So calculate my outgoings, go and get that casual job that covers me. Then I would dedicate every single hour that I have to SMP outside of that. And that's every hour that I can comfortably recover from and stay sane. You don't want to lose the plot and burn out, right? So you got your, let's just call it, let's say it's a 2-day-a-week job. So it's 16 hours, that pays your rent, that pays for food. I would then do every other hour would be to do with SMP. And when I got money from SMP, I would not spend that unless it is being spent on the business. I would not spend that on anything. When I started, I tried to still do fun things, and when I got my SMP, I would just be like, oh, this is my paycheck. It's not your paycheck. Don't treat it like it's your paycheck. When you receive your SMP money, especially in the beginning, maybe $2 out of every 1,000 is actually yours. So yes, so I dedicate every single hour I had that I can recover from and stay sane outside of that casual job to SMP. I would practice and practice some more. The one thing that I feel like I went out of my way as an original beginner to practice more than anybody else in my class and that I saw, but still when I look back on that, it was not even remotely nearly enough. I heard an awesome story of, I think it's Jonathan Grow in America. He's arguably one of the biggest in the world. He worked on melons for 8 months before he did an SMP treatment. Think about that. And this guy's one of the best now in the world. And I'm sure he's worth tons of money. And I think he's got a really nice car. But yeah, I would practice so much more. I would go through every single fruit that I could. I would pigskin. I would definitely get some pigskin. I would soak up information from every single, I would ask questions, heaps more questions. I asked heaps, but I would ask even more again to every single SMP artist that was remotely doing well. I would document content from the get-go. One thing I didn't do, and one thing that I still strive to do a lot more of, but you want to document your journey, every single step. when I started, I thought that no one's going to care about the guy that's starting out. They want someone who's doing well before he talks about anything. That is complete bullshit. It's complete bullshit because you're always going to have someone that's one step before you. So keep sharing. Just keep sharing. It's helpful to others, but it builds your story. It builds content. It builds a personality behind you that clients are going to want to know. It might seem boring, some of the stuff that you would shoot in those early days, but you got to understand a lot of the time when people are looking for an artist, they're looking for the person as well as the artwork. So the more documented content that you have about your journey, the more that someone can relate to that. We've all had struggles in our life, and to see someone struggle and work through, and seeing them in a shitty little studio space, and then they got their big studio space, or seeing them when they first started out to like how good their SMP looks now. So many different things. So yeah, if I could go back, I would document heaps more of my journey. I would film heaps more content than I did. Oh, this one. And I would do heaps of free treatments. Heaps. Fucking non-stop. Bro, just because you don't want to ruin a treatment with a free head, right? You don't want to ruin any treatment. But when it's free, the client sort of knows what's going on here, right? You can be a little, still give it your all, but then, because this is like repetitions, right? Like this is like, if you were to go, right, we would have a boxing fight, right? And there's a boxer who's had, 10 fights, and there's a boxer who's had 1. Who's going to win the fight, right? To get to the point of being like the artist that you like and see, you've got to be able to keep up that pace. And the only way you can keep up that pace is by constantly doing dots. The biggest thing here, talking about impressions and density and all these sort of things, the reason that your work might not look like mine is because I've fucking done 3,000, 4,000 hours of SMP in my life, and you might have done 100. The reason why my work looks like my work and Tony's work looks like his work is that he's probably done 20,000 hours and I've done 4,000 hours. So the more free heads, the more fruit that you tattoo, the more time that you have under the needle, the more time that you do perfect practice and you're constantly evolving, that the faster that you're going to get to a more higher quality SMP. So heaps of free heads. Like if you got your 2-day a week, like this is exactly how I'd structure it. I'd have my 2 days a week that I'm working at a fucking cafe or bar or I don't know, landscaping, pole dancing, whatever it is that you do, right? Topless waitressing, I don't know, whatever your thing is that you get for those 2 days. And then outside of that, free heads. And tattooing fruit and pigskin, and I just getting those reps in. Get those reps in. Outside of that, every single hour would be SMP related. Now I'm going to show you how to structure that in a second, but free heads I can't stress this enough. It's so easy to get free heads. When I get students and they're like, I don't know how to get work, I'm like, if you offered it for free, you'd have heaps of fucking work, and you've had more heads than you could fucking poke a stick at, and then you would be able to progress. And you know what that also gives you? Before and afters. It gives you practice, before and afters. It gives you referrals. That I've had so many free heads that have turned into 2 or 3 paying jobs in the future. And it's giving you content. It's giving you... It is the best thing that any artist starting out can do. I can't express this enough. I've given this advice 10 million times. I'll give it 10 million times more. 10 million is an exaggeration. 10,000 times I've said this. I'm going to say it 10,000 times more. Free. If you've got a day and you're sitting there and you go into work and you don't have a head on, pick up some fruit. Offer it for free. You want to be tattooing. You want to be getting better. If you're not tattooing and doing dots, you're not progressing forward. So I'd have my 2-day a week job that covers my bills, and I'd doing SMP for the rest of that time, and I'd be doing free heads. I'd probably have for 8 sessions in that week, and then I'd get consistent with doing 8 sessions early on. All right, and then the next thing that I would do is I will put time. The next thing that I will put time aside for is these two things: is marketing and sales. If you can't sell, you're not confident in selling, or you have no fucking clue with sales, I will do a course. Do a course in sales. Well, I didn't have that. I've done. Look at that. Whoops. I've done sales before, so that was an area that I was confident in, but marketing wasn't. So I would allocate your time. Bulk of the time goes to SMP, marketing, sales. So I'd take a marketing. Actually, if I could go back, I would take a marketing course, and then I wouldn't have had to waste all the money that I did. Because what you want to do with your marketing is you want to get it to the point that you can do it. Then when you're so busy, you pass on that job to someone else so they can do it. But if you can't do it first, don't pass it off, because it won't work. And I'd spend every single dollar that I have that isn't for my food or my rent into the business. If your business is a hungry little fucking goblin that's just going to eat every single dollar that you throw at it, and that's going to be forever, into the business. I've got in here to ask a lot more questions. So yeah, just keep on, and don't be afraid of criticism from people who are above you, because that's not criticism, that's called help. And if it feels like it hurts your feelings, then I don't know, quit. And what I would say is, so you learn the marketing, you do the marketing yourself. That would be the first that would be the first money I spent, be on a marketing company. More one-on-ones. Oh yeah, and if you've got more one-on-ones with SMP artists, so now you've got those 2 days and the rest of it's going towards your business, I'd find the top few artists in the country that you're at, and I would go and do a one-on-one mentoring with them. Seems like a lot of money, and it seems counterintuitive once you've done this expensive training course, but whatever it is to get your foot in the door with another artist, watching them work, hearing them out, do that. Definitely. I would have more one-on-ones. I would have flown and done every one-on-one mentoring that there is available in Australia when I first started. You want to consume yourself into the culture. That's something that I didn't do. I did well, but I could have done better. Is messaging more people. I thought that people wouldn't be as receptive to talking to a beginner, but they're definitely not. So many people are very, very helpful, and my learning has predominantly been from asking overseas artists and making friendships with overseas artists who are doing really well. So all more than happy to help out. And that's where I learn. Even now, I'm still learning daily, talking to people, because I'm not too big to ask for help or to figure out why that person's business or SMP is better than mine. All right, so one of the main struggles too when I started out is knowing when to pull the trigger on getting your own studio space or moving into a studio space. I pulled that trigger way too early. I would say you need that space. If you don't need the space, stay where you are with the lowest amount of outgoing. So I would find the lowest amount of outgoings that I can find, and I would tattoo out of that space. And if there's an SMP artist in there, I would do that. Okay. And so I've got something else here, but I'm going to touch on that later. I would try and enjoy the process a bit more. I just relaxed my shoulders as I said that. I try and enjoy it and just have a lot more fun. There was a lot of pressure when I started, and the reason that I say about getting the part-time job is that I jumped across really early, so there was a lot of pressure for me to turn this into an income straight away. And that's where I shot myself in the foot, very much so. I spent a lot of money and I wasted a lot of money with a lot of mistakes. Then that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I want to make this content, is because there's so many mistakes and I saw a lot of people make those mistakes and quit. When you're starting out, there's a lot of mistakes. And if you talk to someone like me or anyone else who is full-time and this is what they do and they do good artwork, they're going to be able to help you skip these mistakes. And just don't be too big to listen, because your ego is going to be the reason that you make the mistake. And I've made plenty and lost a lot of money doing so. And so yeah, some of the best, so just enjoying it too. Like some of the best times I've had is with clients, is don't see them as clients, to see them as your mates, have a beer with them, have a chat, enjoy, soak up that friendship with them, soak up friendships with other SMP artists, something that I don't do enough now, but I wish I did more of when I started, is just going out and meeting SMP artists. So crazy. When I did a master's class with Tony, is that I met so many artists, and I was so surprised at how kind everybody was, and how accepting and how friendly everyone was. It's just enjoying that, enjoying being around other artists, enjoy the culture of it all. And that culture is not much at the moment, but it's slowly going to grow, most definitely so. All right, so the next question was, what would you do? What is the I think it was the biggest mistakes, or what's the one thing that you would focus? Oh yeah, what's the main thing you would focus on for your first year of business? Now, these two questions go side by side, right? What would I do if I started a business today, and what was the main thing? So, for the first year of business, the main thing that I'd be focusing on, the very first thing, is defining what you want here, and defining and looking for your why you're here, and not what. So you're looking for the why, your why, not your what. So you're defining what you want and why. Don't look for a what. A what is lots of money. A what is, a lot of the time I see people start out, they say, the reason that I want to do SMP is because of the feeling that it gives to the clients, and the confidence, the feeling that it gives to the clients, and it feels great to be able to change someone's life. Now, although that is good, that is not going to survive you through all the hard shit that comes with starting an SMP business. That's not a strong enough reason why. I'm sorry, it's not. And another one that I hear is, I want financial freedom so I can have my own, so I can have a work-life balance. That also is not going to survive you too, because that's not what you're going to get here. No fucking way. And another one is, I hear, it's like, I want to start my own studio, my own training academy, and I want to have people working under me. No, I'm sorry, but prove me wrong. I would love to be proved wrong in these instances, but everybody that I hear talk about those things don't ever eventuate into anything. It's like the overweight person saying that they just want a six-pack. Why? Why we do stuff is our driving force behind the things that we do, not the things that we gain from it. If you're only thinking about the thing that you gain out of this, that feeling that you get when someone likes their hairline, or the money that you're going to have, or the days off that you're going to get, it's not motivating enough for when it's a struggle. You've been tattooing for 8 hours, you haven't been paid all fucking week, you just had some marketing company screw you over, your impressions just aren't landing. It's tough skin, it's a fucked client, and your impressions aren't landing. It's gonna feel great when he has his hairline. That's not going to push you through those moments. You gotta really define to yourself, like, why are you here? You've done it, you started it, and you decided you like it. And it's not going to be a quick answer, but you're going to just decide, why are you here? Why are you doing this? You can get to the what, but you want to figure out the why. Why is it that, are you obsessed? Are you? Because if you're like, I'm here to make $500,000 a year, right? So let's say that's what you're saying right now. And I get it. Money's cool. But the road that you have to you make $500,000 a year, or even $100,000 a year, even a business that consistently turns over $70,000 a year, is so long that you're going to need something else to drive you through. And also for myself is I've only just slowly started to think about this more and more, defining what I want, because it helps you turn up. Defining why I'm here and what I want is it helps you turn up from day to day. Because what I realized is, and with that feeling, the reason why I say, it's such a great feeling to change people's lives is that 9 out of 10 clients will look in the mirror and go, "Thanks, mate," and walk out. I've had 1 or 2 guys cry. I've had some guys go, "Yeah, this has really changed my life." That little feeling that you get, it goes away. You got to really have a passion for this. You got to have a why that's stronger, because those things aren't going to push you through. So, what the most important thing in your first year is defining what you want here, looking for your why, not your want. Sorry, looking for your why, not your what. So, what is like a thing? I want a flashy car. It's not going to drive you through these moments. It's a why. Why are you doing this? Why? Is it the game? Do you just love the game of just turning up and being obsessed with SMP? Do you, when you go to bed at night, are you thinking about those 2 dots that you fucked up and you just obsessed? You can't not keep turning up until it looks fucking perfect. And it drives you mental and you don't understand why you keep fucking turning up for this. And looking at the future of that, because you want to be driven, because it's harder than it looks. Then after that, the most important thing is obviously the product. You can market shit, but it will always struggle. So if you have a good product, then good marketing is going to work. But if you have a shit product and good marketing, you're going to have a hard time. And easily the most important after defining what you want is getting good SMP. Then probably after that, most important thing is the interaction with your client. Then there's so many things to this. Then there's marketing and selling that SMP, but also branding that SMP. So your product's your brand as well as the SMP. The story I'll tell is that with branding, and that's your logo, that's your content, that's everything around. That's you. You are a part of your product. So your product is you, the brand, the SMP, all of it put together, right? When I was in a studio space with 5 different artists, actually probably 6, maybe even 7 in rotation when there's one space, you could tell what my clientele looked like when it walked through the door, as opposed to the artist sitting next to me, and we were probably the only 2 there doing proper marketing. So you have to understand that branding is important, because you're targeting a certain audience without even realizing it. So it's people that, and branding is putting your face behind it, putting your voice behind it, putting your life behind it. How does your logo look? If you've got a shithouse logo and a silly and great content, and then but there's nothing of you, there's no personal to you, people aren't going to relate to that. People buy from people. Yeah, good product sells, but a lot of the time people want to know that you're genuine as well. And it's weird. People tend to connect with the most random things. Like I posted, I think I was doing jiu-jitsu at the time. I think I had like a jiu-jitsu robe. I don't know if that's the right word right there. The funny looking chef's outfit that we roll around in. So I posted that up, and a guy was following me who was looking for SMP and then booked. And he said the reason that he booked is because he's into jiu-jitsu. Or like I posted at the gym and it's like, the guy seen getting a workout in, he was getting a workout in, and then it was like he's got something to talk to me about. Because you also got to talk throughout that time. Yeah, so SMP is important, your brand's important, marketing's important, but before all of that, defining your goal, why you're here. And and then that defining the goal can help with the brand, because when I first started out, I was like, I like men's mental health. I like going to the gym. I like You know, if you go to my pages, you can fucking pretty quickly see what I'm into, and even now I'm slowly but surely just trying to create that brand around that. Brand is important. It is. You know, there's how many shoes are there that would feel like Nikes and sort of look like Nikes, but everybody goes out and purchases Nike. Why? I don't know. Heaps of fucking reasons. Because they got Michael Jordan, they got the Jordan shoes, they got different athletes that you relate to, that you're into. Everybody's wearing this. It's branding is a whole thing in itself. And what I would say to finish this podcast off is never ever think that you know it all. I literally learned something last week I never knew about SMP. And I'm going to learn something next week that I never knew about SMP. So never ever think that you know it all, and be constantly ready for change. Constantly ready for change. All right, I hope that was helpful. As you can see, there's some long-winded answers. If you throw one or two more in there, that's going to be like a 3-hour podcast. I hope that was helpful. Please do send through any questions that you ever want answered. As you can see, I'm more than happy to go through them and answer them, and I am always happy to share. There's nothing that I'm hiding or holding back here. I genuinely want SMP to be a huge industry in Australia, and I genuinely want people to not have to go through the same struggles that I did. You do need a level of struggle, but what I want is the silly sort of mistakes that can be avoided and that other SMP artists can help beginners out with, but tend to not. For some reason, we see each other as competition. All we're going to do is sink the ship here, people. Shane said this on my podcast the other day, is we are on the verge of mainstream explosion with SMP. So if you're getting in, think about that. It is going to blow up. It's not even known at the moment. Now, if we don't help everybody be half fucking decent at this, it's not going to blow up. America's going to get their boom, and we're going to get fucking nada. So, I hope that was helpful, and thanks for watching.